If you don't watch the video closely, you're going to be like our great friend Pinocchio, whose nose continues to grow and grow and grow, right? We would like to avoid being like our friend. Welcome, 7th grade social studies. Of course, being a lighter note, but of course, we now have to double check we did everything correctly. What I like to do is please open up the Jefferson DBQ document, okay? Open up the document. If you didn't print it, I say you don't need to. If you like to, you can, okay? You don't need to. You can open up digitally. Let's open up that document, 1, and 2, may you open up wherever you wrote the work yesterday. I suggested it not to be typed. If you happen to type it, then you could take that out. If you happen to handwrite it, then you could do that. Let's break down the documents, okay, and where we go from here. So for today, okay, by 8, what I'd like you to do is post the corrections for the document 1 and 2 to come up with reflective paragraph using these documents. And that's on Google Classroom. There's a minimum requirement there for sentences. Of course, that's just to guide you. You can go beyond that. I'd like you to please, please, please provide as many details as you can so you can take your stance using the credible resources. I'd like you to, yes, use your knowledge of Thomas Jefferson that you have in this unit, and then stick to the 7 documents, okay? Stick to these 7. These are going to be your evidence points. We're going to review them right now. What I like you to do, okay, is right there, correct them, or if they don't fit, go on to another page and you could jot them down. But you need the corrections. If you don't have the corrections, it's going to be very, very difficult to move forward. So let's take a look. Let's go to the screen. Okay, we're going to begin with the following. So let me share my screen with you so we can move forward. Okay, there you have it. So what I'd like to do is begin with the directions. So this is what we're going to do. Directions, using the documents above, so the 7 documents here, okay, from part A, and your knowledge of social studies, write a well-developed paragraph that includes a thesis statement with your selected choice. I'm going to show you a couple examples. A body paragraph, okay, or series of paragraphs that include at least 3 pieces of specific important information from the documents. Okay, you're going to need to reference 3 of the documents. We gave you 7, you choose 3. And then the concluding statement. This does not have to be I'm not looking for a 5-paragraph essay. I'm looking for a solid paragraph or series of paragraphs. You can break this into a few if you'd like to. You want to break this into 3. Last year's group, just about all of them broken into 3. Thesis statement with document 1, then document 2, then document 3 with the concluding statement. I believe that would be ideal. Let's review the documents, okay? So what we're going to do before I go into those documents is right here. This is what I'd like you to correct, okay? This document sheet. What did you learn about Jefferson from this document, and does it provide an example of Jefferson upholding his beliefs or betraying them? Okay, the first document, you most likely realized that this is talking about Jefferson taking office, okay, Jefferson's inauguration. You can see, your bullets, you can jot down that Jefferson dressed like a normal citizen, okay? He didn't go ahead and parade around as if he was this great high official, okay? He walked to and from his swearing-in ceremony, so he walked to and from his inauguration. He didn't ride in a carriage like Washington and Adams did. He didn't ride around and show this great, great power. Of course, we know that Washington and Adams didn't want to do that either, show off their great power, but we do, especially Washington, but we do know Jefferson wants to be more modest. He wants to be a man of the people. He doesn't wear the traditional powered wig at the inaugural ball. He's including himself with the others. to show that he is that average citizen, so to say. It's pretty interesting that he shows himself as the average citizen, but if you take a look and remember his estate, he's far from that, okay? But he wants to connect to the American people. So does he, going to the right here, does he go ahead and does he uphold his beliefs, or does he betray them? Well, I would assume that you would have seen that he upheld them, because he promised that he would bring more power to the people. He promised he would bring a greater say and a greater unity to the people, no matter what state that they were a part of. He wanted these individuals to feel as if their new leader was one of them. So your points there should have went along the lines of that he followed that initial statement or series of statements. A man of the people, showing simplicity here, and that's important to move forward with. So that's document 1, where Jefferson is showing that he's one of the people, ready to be there at his inauguration, yes, but a much more, I wouldn't say casual, but yes, a much more casual approach than others. Document 2. This is a letter from Jefferson on slaves. Monticello is his home, okay? Through this statement, some of these are difficult to read, but they are part of history. Basically, what he's showing through this statement here is that one race is superior to another, because he does mention this statement here. We know, brought up from their infancy, without necessity for thought or forecast, are by their habits rendered, meaning made, as incapable as children of taking care of themselves. In the meantime, they are pests in society by their idleness, being without a job. Their combination with the other color, white, produces a disgrace which no lover of this country, no lover of excellence in the human character can innocently approve of. So he's basically saying that African Americans and whites don't fit in here together. He clearly says that the combination with the other color produces a disgrace which no lover of this country can approve of. So he's showing that there is a clear distinction based on race, and that they're born into this, both individuals African American and white. They're born into this. And it's pretty interesting to think of these statements from the same person that said, we the people, that we are United States. So does he stick to his initial beliefs, his initial thoughts? I'm sure many of you said no, because the author of the Declaration of Independence tried to show unity. At the same time, you may want to remember that slavery wasn't going to be a major issue that was going to be discussed, okay, when the Declaration was drafted. You may remember the conversations with Jefferson, with Adams, with Franklin, and they did not want to tackle slavery just yet. And you may recall Ben Franklin making a statement somewhere along the lines of he knew was a much larger issue that they would have to deal with later on. You may also remember at the Constitutional Convention that we had in the classroom, which was wonderful, that slavery, right? Slaves were not counted as a whole person. So you may also look at it from the viewpoint. Okay, of course, the statements here, we look at them in 2020 and we see how they stand out as a great negative. You take a look at how, when writing this declaration, that issue of in Constitution, right? That issue of slavery was different. That wasn't the main focus, so to say, there. And it's important to realize that through these statements, though, you may say, well, here's somebody who was going to bring the nation together, making statements, right? 1814, that show the nation to be divided amongst race. Jefferson's proposal for a bill right here. So what do you learn from this? Elementary schools in every country which shall place every householder within 3 miles of a school. So more individuals, okay, more individuals would have access to education. More children would have access, and through this statement we can see that he knows that they should have access to education. And that starts at a very young age by him saying elementary school. And what's important to learn from this here, whose parents, notice the statement, whose parents are too poor to give them further education. So he makes that statement there. He realizes, okay, that there are financial challenges, just like there are today with schooling, when going into high school, especially when going into college. Well, at the same time, he knows that education is crucial to building the whole individual, the whole American. So starting that education at a young age and continuing it into higher education is something that Jefferson was passionate about. You may stop and think of his role that we discussed the other day, okay? Some of you may have mentioned about the University of Virginia and his role in establishing that, right? Founding that great university. Starting with, yes, a little over 100 individuals and building into what it has today. He places great emphasis while in office, and especially when he retires, quote unquote, from the presidency, to focus on education. So he's a great man of education. Many of you would say, is he sticking to his core beliefs? Well, he made a statement there about the purpose of education. You could see throughout his life, especially after the presidency, he's going to be very closely linked to pushing for and promoting education in this nation. So is that something he swayed with? No, not exactly. He was determined to keep moving forward with it. Many of you may notice number 4 is closely in a way linked to number 2. Just like I visited George Washington's house in Virginia before, and they have left many of the remnants from the slave plantation there to show individuals that there were slaves there. They're not trying to hide it. So historians for Jefferson don't try to hide it either, especially when you realize that he lived on this great plantation called Monticello. This is document 4. And you could see about 80 slaves lived and worked there. They plowed the fields, they planted the wheat, they drove the wagons, they cared for the animals, the hogs, the cows. They fixed food for Jefferson, his wife Martha Jefferson as well, his family. They washed clothing, cared for the children. And basically, you could take a look here at the slaves who lived on that plantation for one point. So you may have noticed that. Okay? You may have jotted down some information based on what I just said. By law, Jefferson's slaves were his property. So just like other individuals at the time, he's someone who could have bought or sold slaves. I know it's a difficult part of history, but as I've always done, throughout the year, is share it with you so you have the information and you look at it from all different sides of history. He could give them away. He could hire them out to other farmers, and slaves who didn't obey were punished. Okay? And he granted freedom only to 7 slaves. You may want to jot that down. And on the right-hand side, you might have said something along the lines of that, again, connecting to his statements that he makes in the Declaration, and you don't need to just stick to we the people, that all of a sudden, these individuals on his plantation, these 80 individuals over the years, around 80, are property. So is that living the American dream that Jefferson and all the founding fathers pushed for? You would clearly say, no, not necessarily. And it's important to realize here, you might say this individual who pushed for such freedom for the colonists, for the Americans, is owning all these slaves. It's pretty interesting to look at it that way too. Of course, a dark part of history. And during this time period, you need to know it's not just Jefferson owning slaves, it's not just Washington owning slaves, but many of these individuals who had these large plantations did so, and not saying it's right, but they were brought up this way as well. Some of you might say, well, Mr. Ray, why didn't he go ahead and fix this? Why didn't he change this? Why didn't he push for change, especially this great man of freedom? Well, that's something you could analyze in your writing. I'm trying to give you both sides of history here, and you could showcase that for your writing. Document 5, it's pretty interesting. This is a memoir from Madison Hemings. And what you realize here, and you may not know this, that Sally Hemings, you'll see my mother, Sally Hemings, accompanying Jefferson's daughter as a servant. Their stay was about 18 months, but during that time, my mother became Mr. Jefferson's lover. You may not have realized that, okay? That Jefferson did have relations with Sally Hemings, whom was a slave. He did have children with her as well. So it's pretty interesting to take a look at. And she refuses to return home with him. And what happens here is, if you continue to read, it says, to induce her to do so, he promised extraordinary privileges and made a solemn pledge that her children should be freed at the age of 21 years. So he's promising great privileges. He's saying that her children will be freed at the age of 21. So she returns home with him to Virginia. Soon after their arrival, she gave birth to a child of whom Thomas Jefferson was the father. It lived but a short time, so that child died, and she gave birth to 4 others, and Jefferson was the father of all of them, has the names there. What's interesting is we all became free agreeably to the treaty. And they were all married and they had their own families. It's a different part of Jefferson than we're used to seeing. So is this sticking to Jefferson's, core beliefs here? Well, number one, is it showing great loyalty to one individual, to the First Lady of the nation? No, they vowed in holy matrimony to remain united. So in that sense, in that personal sense, you could see that Jefferson has betrayed her, not staying loyal to one woman. At the same time, you could connect this even a different way, where these children, right, that he had are free. They are free. They can be married. They can have their own family. So is that following Jefferson's belief for greater freedoms of individuals? Or is this happening through an agreement because they are his children? It's interesting that you could look at that document a couple ways. I'm sure many of you are going to want to use that one. That's one that you could really focus on. A Louisiana Purchase, finalizing the deal with France. So hopefully you have that down, that they're finalizing the deal with France. Thomas Jefferson remains convinced by advisors that included Thomas Paine, you may recall him from Common Sense, that the transaction was not beyond the scope of the Constitution. Okay? The transaction here is not going beyond the scope of what is stated in the Constitution. Jefferson purchases this land from France in 1803, and the size, just with a stroke of the pen, the size of the U.S. is doubled. And you could see that clearly here. On the right, what they had, and on the right, what they had, and now here in green, the middle here, Louisiana Purchase of what they now have. Jefferson, you may want to jot this down, he struggled over whether to suggest an amendment to finalize the deal. Like, is this allowed through the Constitution? So what Jefferson is trying to do is see if an amendment can, needs to be added to finalize this. Eventually, especially with help of individual advisors such as Thomas Paine, they realize it's not beyond the scope of the Constitution. So you should have those notes there. Does this stick to his initial principles, beliefs on the right-hand side? Well, Jefferson wanted to always continue to see the nation growing in size, growing in power, uh, showing the U.S. and their strength. At the same time, you could look at it a different way, where Jefferson wanted, I thought, right, we originally discussed when we first started this unit, is he wanted to limit the power of the federal government. And now all of a sudden he's trying to see, do we need to add an amendment? Can we get away with what we're about to do here? How can we find out how we do this? And that's showing power of the federal government. So in one way, he's sticking to the belief of showcasing a way that the nation can grow and develop. But at the same time, he's also showing the influence of the federal government that you and I thought that he was trying to reduce. Pretty interesting. The last one here, document 7, you should have that Jefferson did try to reduce, right? You see, he's tried to shrink the government and cut costs. And that starts initially, he wants to start that right away, wherever possible. He wants to, number one, reduce the size of the army, halt the expansion of the army that had been previously planned, lower the expenses for the government for any social functions, any social gatherings, including like inauguration gathering, to reduce the costs. So he also rolled back Hamilton, right, Alexander Hamilton's economic program by eliminating, you may want to jot this down, all internal taxes and reducing the influence of the Bank of the U.S., which Hamilton played a crucial role in. Okay? Jefferson favored free trade rather than government-controlled and trade tariffs. So is this sticking to his core beliefs here that he initially has proposed? So you want to make sure you have that information down. What I do want to bring up for you to see here is the slides that we had early on in this unit, right? Looking closely at that last paragraph. I'm going to pull this up here for a moment so you can see. So for the slides that we had, here's what's going to happen in a sense, I wouldn't say immediately, but surely in immediate proposal for Jefferson. We're going to jot some of this down on the right and just give you a moment here. So we're going to make sure you add enough details here. And then what we're going to do right after I show you that is go to the document here where we're going to pick 3 documents to focus on. I just want you to choose 3, okay? You've showed me notes on all. Please show the corrections on these, and then we're going to choose 3, okay? I'm going to show you what you need to do. So number 1, you need to start with a thesis. You need evidence for at least 3 examples, and then a concluding statement. So here are some example stances that you can have. Please don't copy and paste mine. So you need to answer this question, the essential question. To what extent did Jefferson live up to his ideals and beliefs? To what extent did he live up to them? Okay? Notice my 2 here. Based on the given evidence, it is clear that Thomas Jefferson did live up to his beliefs. So we're saying that he did, because he remained committed to the ordinary citizen. He remained devoted, I should say remained devoted to education. And he was determined to expand the size of the nation. So those are 3, okay? And you could stick to those 3 in saying that, yeah, he continued. Thomas Jefferson lived up to the beliefs by following those 3 during his presidency. At the same time, you could say this. Based on the given evidence, it is clear that Thomas Jefferson did not live up to his beliefs because he seemed to place certain races over others. He had a large number of slaves on his plantation, and he was not devoted to his wife. At the same time, you could even say, based on the given evidence, Thomas Jefferson lived up to some of his ideals, but not all of them. And you could provide one or two that he did, and maybe one that he didn't. Notice I wrote the document. It has the document there. It says the document in parentheses. When you write your thesis, can you put the document in parentheses, please? Okay? Put the document in parentheses. Then you're going to state how he either lived up to the ideals or how he did not, using the evidence. You may use quotes, but I want more in your own words. Explain. I'm more than happy if you go ahead, you start with your thesis statement, then continue with the first document, then another paragraph, the second document, and then the third document is the third paragraph, and then you have a concluding sentence. In all, Jefferson lived up to his ideals and beliefs because, or in all, you can see that through his life, Jefferson lived up to some, but not all of his ideals and beliefs. I know yesterday you may have worked with a partner. I asked you to do this individually. You can communicate with that same partner if you use one. Say, hey, how did you do that yesterday? You know, how are you going to look at this certain document? You're more than welcome to do that, but I'd like your writing to be individualized. So the document is not opening that I want to show you here for the PowerPoint, but if you look at your Jefferson notes that we wrote down the first day, you can use that if you plan for document number 7. So make the corrections, post it, have your writing paragraph, it's a test grade, have that posted, and you'll be good to go. Show a great understanding, because we're not going to have the formal test that we were supposed to have here for this unit. So this is going to be the test, and you need to bring out truly who Jefferson was, how Jefferson is remembered, and that is essential. I really need to see that. I need to see some of his core beliefs right here. This is the document, okay? Republicans hope to reduce the size of the army, lower taxes, eliminate the national debt, and do away with the pomp and formality, okay, that surrounded the office of the presidency. Well, document number 7, okay, is going to tell you that he basically was able to do so. So you can use this here to help you as well. Use your notes, use the documents. I look forward to read these. It's pretty exciting. Let me know if you have any questions, and keep moving forward. Good luck with it. And if you have any questions with it, let me know. Enjoy. Take care.